Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Rizkika Ade Ramadani. On this occasion of my friends and I will differ the material and did the reference parameters. So here are the members of the group. Check it out.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Helmi Hildayani, NIM 180403039 from Unit 2. I will explain about layout, typography, organization, client specification, and employer policies.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I am Dedi Supantri. I am from Unit 2. I will explain about tailoring and sub-language.
Hello guys, introduce myself. My name is Diah Ayu Novianty. I am from Semester 6 Unit 2. And the rank number student 18040316.
I am Sabrina Fahriyanti S from Unit 2, NIM 180403026.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hai, I'm Zalila Kamal. My NIM 180403028 and I'm from semester 6 unit 2.
Hi, I'm Muhammad luthfi Azra. My NIM is 1804031. Unit 2 English Department of Sabrina University.
So guys, before entering this material, I will explain what referencing parameters are. The things a reference checks for the types or arrow go towards its sentence while on the partners and agency to give their transfer coefficient. Well, so let's are useful reminders. The checklist contains 20 items. There is non-literal reading age, sentence of the translation on some of the parameters that occur, not just reverse, must deal with these parameters and apparatus from the parameters discussed in this chapter. So, I will explain what the query. Unless you have specialists been asked to prepare and adapt on, or your client is paying premium for extra heights. Brings quality inquiry will be most important feature of the translation. Generally speaking, the first text of the professional translation is to grade that the translation means more or less. What the source means, or to be more careful what you think the source means. Or particularly, you as a review must answer that there or make major. Mention of space, which calls seriously means let the reader about important features of the source text. Message index prepares the most important aspect of a query is the correct reading of the overall structure of the message. This sequence of events of argument must be the one if the source text and accurate translation does not have to be false translation, nothing to do with reader translation of used vocabulary and sentence structure of the target language, which are close as a versatile tools of the source language. A query has strictly to do with the message species. More specifically, a query sentence does not mean represent or writing my translation procedure. Is there that imperfect the quality of the writing? A query does not mean search unoriented and translation and which you have replied or eliminated method. Edit and culture explain or a user functional request of culture filters first quizzes can I will be considered the card toward their limits. See at the next second one completed. Just how accurate does a translation have to be? Not accurate as possible, but as accurate as necessary given to be of the next. The use to be made of the translation ephemeral text which will be needed and discarded and not used to make important discussion that need to be current public on or document, which will be used for important. This is surface of the source text in the minute of the May. This is not quick acquired impulse writing translation, unlike oral. Readers of some texts regret them or read the document. They will be distracted from the message by the language is probably wishful thing to image that translation can be both experimental and experimentally accurate. The guys, one word translated is accurate actually to guess one source. But inquiry can also arise when the source has been correct under oral library English because this name would tend professions, one of which is called Cobert's professional library, or something of the sort. Final point on authority, numbers are one an important part of two messages. In any text where numbers insert the message, it's a good idea. Make sources checks for the accurate reference. So thanks. The next.
Okay, 12.2 completeness. Unless specifically asked or write a summary or a case, translate only a part of a document, or provide an adaptation like image, change in content. Translator biasa itu diharapkan untuk merender semua pesan dari teks sumber tanpa tambahan dan kemudian tanpa pengurangan, atau sering kita sebut dengan NANS atau NANS. As Andrew Marvell put it in, to his worthy friend Dr. Wedi opened his translation of the popular errors on 1651. His translation tipped that a did more as much as the dead take from the store of the first author. Okay, completeness might at first and shown to be an aspect of accuracy, but there is an important difference. First, accuracy is quantitative matter. It's about correspondence of meaning in individual passage, korespondensi makna dari bagian-bagian individu. But completeness, on the other hand, is quantitative matters. In the whole of the source text there is a translation and nothing more. Apakah seluruh teks tersebut sudah diterjemahkan atau tidak, and anything been left untranslated, there is still the source language within. Apakah tidak ada yang diterjemahkan ataukah apa masih adakah sumber bahasa ataupun dari surat perintah. The last is revising of accuracy is semantic exercise, but revising of completeness is a medical method. Will you notice the translator I skipped over the point, a long list of bulleted points, or that a whole passage was skipped when a phrase was repeated in successive sentence or paragraph? The translator I returning source take from the translations went to the second occurrence of phrase, even took a material implying the first occurrence had not yet been translated. Next, the nouns. Participles should not be taken too literally. First, it applies only a relevant meaning. Some of information the translator will be very important to the reader, some less important. Thus, if the text is complaint containing a great many experiences of the complaint's emotional states, some of them can be omitted if the point of translation simply to allow an official determine the substance of the complaint, or take a text and cause an analysis which begin with a description of the researcher's whole page would summarized or omitted. Second, always keep the mind of the next participle refer the next message, not to its wording. Completeness doesn't require the reproductions of repetitiveness typically of pure written short text. Usually, the research should ensure the repetitiveness had been eliminated. However, if this likely to be a time-consuming task and excellent of style. And third, completeness does not require a legitimacy. Element meaning which the source text can be left in both other translations. There is no problem of completeness as long as reader can recover this element. Leaving message element implicit together with elimination of redundancy is important when only a small, predetermined amount of space is available for translation. If this technique doesn't work, then perhaps a different font, a smaller font size, a change margin, and reduction is intelligent spacing might solve the problem. But in some cases, it may be necessary to simply omit material. And last, fourth, there is a conference issue. The translation has explicit message element to be employed in the research. This too is sometimes presumable, sometimes not. The supervisor dealing with expert-to-expert text will usually remove any explanation of technical concepts that have been added by the translation. Sometimes revisers will find themselves dealing with the are really added change, element of meaning they are not really implied in the source. Oke, next dilanjutkan oleh teman saya.
Okay, I will explain the next material. The next material about logic. Now we are moving on to the content parameter. Thus the text says about topic. While a translation may well express ideas you find silly or outrageous, there should usually not be any contradiction, impossible temporal or causal sequence, or another errors of logic in a narrow sense. Also, the reader must be able to interpret each sentence correctly without having to draw on the knowledge that is imparted only in a later sentence. One way to ensure the intelligibility of the law of idea is to keep in mind the question: what is the author trying to do there? In this article, in this section, in this paragraph, and in this sentence. Describe, persuade, point out, give in knowledge, move to the next step in an argument or procedure, give the cause, and even describe in the previous sentence or paragraph. Attract the reader's attention to key point, restart and early point for emphasis, like of logic can do from. Okay, the number one, this text is illogical and the translator has done anything about it. What can usually assume the next author intended something which makes sense, but for expression or for self-editing has resulted in nonsense, in contradiction, as the reader most likely interpretation. Sometimes his intention will be very clear from the content as well as other incidentally audience by claiming that the employment that has got from 9.1 to 9.8%. The next, number 2, the course text makes sense, but the translator has introduced nonsense or contradiction. Among student entrants, such nonsensical passages often arise from lack of language knowledge or from the habit of picking a dictionary equivalent of inter-sentence connector rather than considering what were in the target language content. A final point, while some wording are not actually illogical, it can be difficult to follow their logic for linguistic reasons. Sequence of negative words can be hard to be understand. For example, the minister refused to deny that he would resign if not agreement we reach. It can be some time to realize that this means. Suppose no agreement were reached, would the minister that resigned? When he was asked this question, he did not take the opportunity to state that he would continue in office even without agreement.
In here, I will explain about the fake and the smoothness. The first, I will explain about the fake. Although checking a text for factual as well as conceptual and mathematical errors is not a central task of translator, such errors are obviously of cumulative importance. They will be spotted immediately by readers of the translation who are knowledgeable about the subject matter. Clients will appreciate it if these errors are not simple skip over in silence. They are most often present in the original, but they may sometimes be introduced inadvertently by the translator. In some cases, the short text, although ignorance of the true fact, may be significant. Here, an example of a translator introducing a conceptual errors while translating the finding of an administrative tribunal. Namely, the first, the common law court have already dealt with the charge of robbery. Second, extortion in the matter before us. There is an important difference between the transfer parameters and the content parameters. For someone comparing the translation to its source, there may not seem to be much difference, but the effect on the readers of the translation is not the same. Another difference between transfer and content error is that the former are detected by comparison with the short text, while errors in logic and mathematics, as well as many factual and conceptual errors, are detectable without reference to the short text. The next, the smoothness. Generally speaking, the meaning should come across to the reader of a translation on first reading at normal reading speed. An example of a common problem is poor sequencing of verb tenses from sentence to sentence, as well as improper selection of tenses. In translation from phrase, for example, a common form of the verb can be rendered in English either by the simple past or the perfect, like a translator was hired or a translator has been hired. Both may be perfectly grammatical, but often only one will fit the flow of a narrative. Unsmooth writing in the source cannot justify unsmooth writing in the translation. Varying degrees of smoothness are acceptable, but the appropriate degree is determined by the user and use of the translation, not the smoothness of the short text. Since the first duty of translator is to translate, it is important for the revisor to check that the translator has minimized short language words. Another interference with smoothness is sentence that contain several acronyms. Smoothness has become a more pressing concern in recent years because many translations now include passages passed in manually of using translation memory from previous translation or from client documentation that was originally written in the target language. The joints between the past part and the translator's own work may not be smooth.
Tailoring. The translation has been tuned to its readers and to the use they will make it. For example, if the document gives instruction for install a video card in a computer, you must imagine a typing computer user following the sequence of account set out in translation. The translation must have the right level of language, that is, the right degree of the formality and technicality, and the right every tone and vocabulary must be sweet and education to level readers and to their knowledge of the subject's mere of text. The degree of formality of the source text is large and relevant. The reviews must establish whether the text in the target language has the right degree of formality of technique for its future readers. Sub-language. Its genre and each field of reading in the target language draw in the different section of the lexical, syntax, and theoretical resources of the language. A syntax example. Meaning of meaning are normality present in the past tense in the English. Fridge, on the other hand, use the present, the third minute would be grammatical but intense constituents. A sentence like "made a report on client completion." Genre may also differ in the degree of which they prefer noun-based structure or the less formal. Most speech like verb-based structure, the things that you have to do if you're poor. Finally, even the genre in the target language will have its two structure. There is a typicality way of structuring repeats of academic papers that may differ from that what is found in the structured language.
Okay, now I want to explain about idioms and mechanics. Idioms. In every language, only some of grammatically possible combination of words are actually used. These are idiomatic combination. And if text contains an idiomatic wording that will distract native speaker of the language from the informational contents of the text. And in editing word, lack of idiomaticity is usually not a problem unless the writer is not a native speaker. And however, in the translation, the situation is very different. Okay, and next about mechanics. Is it especially important to find mechanic error when revising text that will appear on homepage, on public signage and prestigious publication? And if the translation has been prepared by typing over an electronic version of the source text, be sure that punctuation and number writing convention of the source language have been replaced with target language conventions.
Layout. To revise, you will need to look at a version of the translation that demonstrates how it will be formatted in its final form. A page with too much type is difficult to read, so make sure there are enough margins and spacing between pages. Check to see if the layout is still the same. If any readers are likely to compare the source and the translation, double-checking the layout is especially critical. For example, the text in both languages is to be published as a single document. Clients might request that the layout match that of the source text as part of the brief. If the target language genre rules require otherwise, revisers can double-check that this has been achieved. And And the next about typography. The main things to check for here are moderation and consistency. It will be difficult to read a text with a large number of bolded, italicized, capitalized, underlined, or colored words. Also, make certain that each computer is used for the same purpose every time. Easy to pick out special terminology. Italicization for any such language words retained in the translation. Be sure that any bolding, italicization, or underlining used in the search text hasn't been mechanically replicated in the translation. In the target language, the focus must make sense. And if there is a proofreader, the revisers must understand these parts of typography since it affects context. Check that all headings of the same depth, easy subsection, are treated the same way. There could be abrupt shifts in font style if the translator has pasted in certain words from other documents. The next, organization. The overall organization of the translation is critical for readers to work through the text and understand its structure. Chapter 5 discusses organizational issues such as paragraphing, sections numbering, and cross-reference, and what is said there relates to both translation and original writing. If organizational problems are found in the source text, report them to the client. The next, client specifications. Some clients provide very precise instructions, such as using terminological equivalence, using phraseology from such and such a manual or other text in the target language, leaving quotes in the source language and adding a translation in brackets after it and not including any translator footnotes. User specifications are also unsuitable because the client is unfamiliar with writing convention in the target language. In an ideal world, all issues will be resolved prior to the start of the translation. If this is not the case, the reviser will have to choose between fidelity to the target language and fidelity to the client. The last, employer policies. Employer of salaried translators as well as agencies that hire freelance translators can make statements about how they want their translator to handle the job. For example, in the case with alternative spellings, as a specific dictionary, use 100% matches found in memories without change and interpret reasonably only to eliminate any signs of search language rhetoric. Employer practices should not always be acceptable to revisers. Some employers demand that translators and revisers concentrate on mechanics and other subjects where clients can easily spot errors. But a reviser might believe that a translation requires more attention. 100% memory matches have been used for tailoring and smoothing. They must then choose between their employer's loyalty and their own ethical values.
So, okay everyone, maybe this all we can say. So, thanks for listening to the videos. I hope you will understand what we have to say. So, thanks for watching. Bye bye.